And that's right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first edition, the debut edition of the Best Seat in the House podcast. I'm Rob Cramer. You might know me from WGBB Radio, my podcast, Coffee with Cramer. And this is my co-host, Bobo Daniel Kurlan. Daniel Kurlan, welcome to the show. And you might know Daniel from the Opie and Anthony show or Compound Media, the former East Side Dave show. And, me and Bo are getting together and doing a show of our own now. How you doing, Dan?
I'm doing great. A bit upset at Robert Manfred. I think I may have printed out pictures on my computer so Mr. Malunigan could piss on.
Exactly. And a lot of baseball fans are rightfully upset with Rob Manfred and the rest of Major League Baseball. We'll be getting into that in just 1 second, as I just want to give us a proper introduction. The Best Seat in the House podcast. This is our debut episode. Me and Bo have known each other for, I'd say, the last decade or so, right, Dan? What do you think?
Yeah, I think I've known you since like 2014.
Yeah, we met at the Opie and Anthony Unmasked with Ron Bennington at Sirius XM. It was actually at Caroline at Caroline's in New York City. And ever since then we've been buddies. We've gone to a lot of Met games. We talked a lot of sports. I've had you on my former radio show at WGBB. I've had you on my podcast. And whenever we get together and we start talking sports, it's always a fun time. And a lot of people end up listening. For some reason, people like to hear a couple of Met fans fucking bullshit about sports for an hour or so. So, hey, you know what? Let's give them what they want. And this is the Best Seat in the House podcast. You could follow us on Instagram at Best Seat in the House podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at BSith podcast _podcast. Best Seat in the House, BSith BSITH _podcast. Check us out on there. And Dan, what's your Twitter handle and your Instagram handle, just so everybody knows?
My Twitter handle is Bobo103NYC. My Instagram is Bobo718DK. And my YouTube is just one word, Daniel Kurlan. So I got some on my YouTube as well.
Very nice, very nice. Check out Dan there. Follow him, like and subscribe. Everything else, you can check me out on Twitter at Cramer New York. It's my last name, CramerNY. And you can check out my old show, Coffee with Cramer, at Coffee W Cramer on Twitter. Also, all the good stuff at WGBB. Check them out at WGBB Radio. But so now that we got all that settled, Dan, let's actually get into our first topic that we're going to be covering on the show. And that topic is the current Major League Baseball lockout. I know that's definitely been sticking in your and my craw for the last couple of months, ever since the lockout was initiated by the owners on December 2nd. And as you alluded to before, Rob Manfred, who, quite frankly, I don't think he's been getting enough blame in this. He came out today, he canceled another week of games. So it looks like, as of right now, even if they strike a deal tomorrow, we're not going to see our first regular season baseball game until at least April 14th, a full over 2 weeks later than the original March 31st opening day. Dan, what are your thoughts on this? As this news just dropped within the last hour.
It was depressing. When I was watching that news conference, I may have been messing with my little recreation of the Opie and Anthony soundboard. It's obvious which sound effects I was using during that press conference. There may have been a couple of Homer Simpson boos and a couple of Be More Funnies.
Hopefully a car crash.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there was a couple of car crashes as well.
Yeah, that press conference was depressing as hell. I only heard it on the radio. I didn't actually get a chance to watch it as it was happening. I was on my way home from work. But it's a very bad situation that we find ourselves in baseball. right now as the owners and the players are currently at an impasse. They're coming together to try and finalize this collective bargaining agreement, and they haven't been able to agree on anything. Uh, the insane thing to me is that the gap that they've bridged over the last I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks of their negotiating has been tremendous. I mean, we went from the players asking uh, for over $100 million pool for players who are pre-arbitration eligible. That means players within their first 0 to 1 or 2, 3 years, right around there, and they haven't hit arbitration yet. So this is money that will be doled out from a collective pool provided by the owners. We started out this process with the owners the owners suggesting that they kick in zero amount of money, and the players wanted over 100 million. Now, when we look at this, the owners have come up to about 40 or 50 million. The players have come down to about 60 million. So it seems like there should be some some able to bridge ground there at some way at least. When you look at the other stuff, I mean, you see that players, the major league minimum. So players, once again, early on in their contracts, early on, young players in their playing careers, they have the major league minimum coming up to 700,000. Now, last year, the major league minimum was 570,000. So it would actually be making a $130,000 leap in one season, the biggest jump in the history of the game, which is pretty impressive. And it's come a long way from the owners offering 605 as their first offer, which was pretty lame. Pretty lame. The owners, in my opinion, had a lot of bad juju going into these last couple of days. I think public opinion was against them. I think there's a lot of pressure from them, and I think personally, the owners have come quite a long way. And today, the players rejecting this offer seems a little unreasonable to me. Well, what do you think, Dan? I mean, there's got to be common ground somewhere, and you have to give a little to get a little too.
Yeah, exactly. I think the players have been willing to make a fair deal, and I think the owners are not doing enough. There's not enough urgency to get this done. They had time from December 1st. They should have been negotiating right from December 1st.
That's where you hit the nail on the head, my friend. You hit the nail on the head. I couldn't have said it better myself. And that is where guys like me and you are going to sit here and blame Rob Manfred. I mean, you locked the players out starting on December 2nd, and then they didn't even make their first offer until I believe it was 43 days later, which is just insane. How do you do that? I understand maybe taking a week or two off for the holidays or whatever, but this is December 2nd. That means you had a full 3 weeks before it even hits December 20th. So you could have had 3 weeks of negotiating in good faith. You could have had so all the progress that we've made now in the last 2 weeks because the players and the owners' feet have been to the coals could have been made in December. But Rob Manfred, who's a labor lawyer, by the way, a guy who was one of the lawyers representing Major League Baseball in the 1994 player strike, you'd think he'd know this. You'd think he wouldn't just let them sit there for a month without doing anything. And it's just very, very disappointing that they didn't even start negotiating for the most part until a week or two before spring training was supposed to start in earnest. And now we're sitting here now with the first 2 weeks of the baseball season canceled. And had they come to a deal today, they would have made up the first week of games and played a full 162 game season. The players getting full pay, and guys getting full years of eligibility, and all that stuff. But now we're going to definitely be playing a shortened season for the second time in 3 years. And the only people that lose in all this are the fans. Guys like me and you who live and die for baseball. We live and die for our Mets. You know,
Yep,
now we're sitting here
exactly.
with nothing else.
Not only are we do we lose out, a lot of the cities lose out. The businesses that make money off of the baseball season, the local bars, especially the stadiums that have bars nearby and stuff. They're losing money as well. Advertisers lose money. Merchandise that ends up selling a lot during baseball season, they they lose money. People in the ticket sale resale business, they lose money as well. There's so many people who, and the stadium workers. I know someone who works at the stadium, and he loses out because of that.
Yeah, it's true, man. I mean, they absolutely, and especially you know from knowing me the last few years, I always like to go down to spring training. It's one of my favorite things in the world. I love to go down to Port St. Lucie. I love to see the Mets and watch the guys in camp and see the young kids, and just I just love that atmosphere of spring training. It's one of my favorite things. Obviously, the
Yeah,
last couple of years with the pandemic, that really hasn't that really hasn't happened too much. But just like
yeah,
you said, all the guys around there that work at the stadium and work around the stadium at the bars and everything, they're all out of work right now.
yeah. As a matter of fact, I encourage everybody on March 31st, if there's a bars or restaurants that are nearby your nearest major league stadium, that are probably open year round, go to eat at those restaurants on that day. Support, maybe have a couple of beers from, at those bars. Support the bars. In my case, since there isn't really anything near City Field, I mostly think of like Woodside as like the place, the area to pregame before the game, a couple of stops away in a number 7 train. I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna get myself a burger and a beer at a Donovan's on a March 31st, to
Exactly.
a bar that makes a lot from people hanging out there before and after the game because of it being subway stops away from City Field.
Exactly, man. And I couldn't have said it any better. Look at this guy, Daniel Bobo Kurlan, helping local businesses. So gotta like that a lot. And when you just look at the people that are being affected, um, you know, you also look at everything that's gonna happen should they finally come to a deal, whenever that is. Um, Now, what I'm really excited for, whenever it happens, because the way that these negotiations are going between these two sides, I'm not expecting it to happen really anytime soon. But the way this thing has been going, when they finally do put pen to paper and end this ridiculous lockout, they're gonna have a whole frenzy for those first couple of days. There's going to be a free agent frenzy that we see in other sports all the time, like basketball and hockey and even football. Um, Baseball really doesn't have that. Baseball usually it's more like a slow drip. You have the hot stove, the GM meetings. Things tend to start to heat up a little bit, and the holidays it cools down after the new year. Okay, we've done that song and dance for a lot. This past year was very different, where everybody knew you had to make your major deals by December 1st. And, obviously we saw our Mets come down with a whole bunch of big deals, like, Max Scherzer and Marte and all these guys that they've added, um, Escobar. And then when you look around the league at other guys, like still Freddie Freeman still hasn't signed yet. Carlos Correa still hasn't signed yet. You have a whole bunch of pitchers like Carlos Rondon and Kikuchi, and all these guys are still free agents. And not to mention, there's going to be some trades made. The GMs can't make anything official yet, but they're talking behind the scenes for the last couple of months. Oh, after this lockout's over, I'm going to trade X player for Y player. Oh, okay. Well, maybe you throw in Z player, and it's all that stuff is going to happen. They can't use the actual names yet, but it's all going to come flying out, and that's going to be a pretty fun period. So even though I'm kind of down in the dumps right now, at least we have that to look forward to. That there is going to be all this action as soon as they finally do figure this thing out.
Yep, that's correct. I'm pretty sure Billy Epler has been on the phones with agents. They can't say anything or make talk dollars and cents, but they have something ready to go as soon as we'll probably be watching a spring training game, and we'll be seeing hearing news the that little breaking news sound effect that SNY uses during that
Mm-hmm.
game that just signed Chris Bryant. Might be I'm just using an example of the breaking news we might be hearing during a spring training game.
You're right, and I would love to see Chris Bryant, man. Actually, John Heyman from the MLB Network just reported today that the Mets supposedly are going to have major interest in a pitcher along the lines of Kikuchi, Yasiel Kikuchi, and also who's the, and he also mentioned a left-handed bat. So it looks like the Mets are going to be in the market for at least a couple of lefties. I also heard that the Yankees requested the medical reports on Carlos Correa and Carlos Rendon before the lockout was instituted. So maybe their head is in a little bit of a bigger frame right now, but on a wider scale, obviously me and you are Met fans, so we're going to hone in on the Mets. But on a wider scale, I mentioned Freddie Freeman as a free agent. Do you expect Freddie Freeman to return to the world champion Braves, or do you think that he could be lured elsewhere? Personally, I'd love to see him get the hell out of Atlanta, even if it means going to the Yankees. I'll drive him to the Bronx, get out of Atlanta. I don't want to play him 19 times a year anymore.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's going to be 50-50. Either he's going to the Braves or he's going to the Yankees. It's just a matter of which one. And as soon as the lockout ends, it's gonna become a frenzy. It might be like watching the NFL draft all of a sudden. It's gonna feel like.
It's true. That's true. And it's really going to be an awesome couple of days. And it's going to be a good chance for baseball to heal over those couple of days, because God knows there are a lot of open wounds for everybody, owners, players, reporters that have been down here just looking for any kind of news over the last few weeks, and fans obviously. So a lot of interesting stuff with baseball. We got some fun stuff to look forward to, but we still got to go through this crap right now.
Yep, and I have a feeling that until this lockout ends, that hopefully it's not completely like 2020. God, I don't want to go through that again. Not be having to watching on TV and not being able to be at the stadium, but we might we might have to experience that part where we're watching baseball from foreign countries. Like, I have a feeling I'm going to be streaming Japanese baseball.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy a couple of years ago doing that, and the Korean league and the Japanese league and all this stuff. So I really hope that it doesn't come to that. But at least one thing is for sure, though. At least we would get minor league baseball, so we could even at least have that.
That's true. The Brooklyn Cyclones are going to be starting earlier because this is their second year as a full season in high A ball. Last in May. This year they're starting in April. So I hear it gets a little chilly around there around that time of year. So I'm expecting I'm expecting that first home game, the Cyclones, because of the location. It's gonna be pretty chilly on April 12th. And I'm going to that game.
Oh, are you really? It's definitely going to be chilly, but it'll definitely be a good time. And especially if let's keep our fingers crossed that our boys are down at spring training on that date. Well, actually, I hope they're not in spring training still, but the way things are going, it's probably going to be that way. They'll probably be in the middle of spring training when you're at that game. And let's just hope that that at least we know when opening day is going to be. And I don't think the owners are or the players are very motivated to begin the season before May 1st. And that's very unfortunate, but that's the way it seems to me. If you had to make a guess right now, Dan, let's put our money where our mouth is. What day do you think opening day is on?
I'm thinking in a range somewhere between April 15th and mid May. I actually might be heading into Florida around April or so. So it would be a crazy timing to unexpectedly, unplanned, to be there during spring training out of all things.
Very true. Very true. And yeah, I'm thinking May 1st. I'm thinking they might make it like it. Do you remember the 95 strike when they came out? Uh Opening day was like April 28th or right around there. It was right around your birthday actually.
Yep,
And
I actually remember that. I remember that. I actually went to it's a similar thing to what I said now. I had like I said I might potentially be on vacation in Florida. I was on vacation during Florida, like like the Easter week or whatever it was, and I ended up catching a game in St. Lucie during
oh,
that
very
time
cool.
because it was just unexpectedly we happened. First time I had ever happened to be in Florida during spring training, and it was unplanned. It was just we were gonna be there that week, and we just that my aunt decided to bring us to St. Lucie because it was in West Palm Beach, short distance from St. Lucie, so we went.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
First,
And St. Lucie really is awesome. And it's changed a lot over the years. No doubt about it.
yeah, I'm sure that stadium, that area looks a lot different than it did. I
you got that.
done a good job. Even Steve Cohen has added some nice little touches that make it clear that it's the Met spring training site.
That's true. And you know what? You just brought up the thing that I wanted to just wrap up our baseball discussion on. Because then we'll start talking a little NFL. I know we got our Jets and our Giants to talk about. And then we'll touch on a little hockey before we wrap up. But before we finish this little baseball discussion, how weird is it, man? How weird is it that we went from being Met fans who, for our entire lives we've been second class citizens in our own city. We're always, we were never taken seriously, especially from a payroll and free agent standpoint and all this stuff where everybody knew the Mets weren't going to sell, even when they spent money, when they signed Carlos Beltran in '05, the only reason the Mets got Beltran is because the Yankees didn't want it. The Yankees told him no, and the Mets gave him more money. So, um, I it isn't it so weird that we've come like full circle now of being everything that I just mentioned to now owners in Major League Baseball are actually making a rule that is going to be referred to as the Steve Cohen rule because they don't want owners spending, 60, 70 million over the cap. How weird is that, man, that we finally have a good owner and now Major League Baseball is going to try to, rain on that parade at least a little bit.
I have a feeling whatever tax they're going to be doing, it's not going to stop Steve Cohen. It didn't stop George when he was around, when there was tax.
Oh, I agree. I think you're right about that. I think it's not going to stop Steve Cohen. And as a matter of fact, I saw a report last night, which would be on Tuesday night, as we record this on Wednesday, that Steve Cohen is perfectly fine paying a tax and paying more money with the collective bargaining threshold. And, he said that as long as it's for the greater good of the game and that money being dispersed helps those other teams that, don't have the ability to make the kind of money like the Mets do, which fans that don't understand this and have watched what the Wilpons have done for the last 20 years, the Mets actually could be a money-making powerhouse. They really could. Steve Cohen actually turned a profit in City Field last year, in a year where the Mets didn't even have fans in the stadium half the year. The Wilpons hadn't turned a profit on the Mets since 2016. The last time they made the playoffs. So, it's just good to see that even in a year where the Mets kind of had a crappy season on the field, that Steve Cohen was able to still turn a profit. And that really just goes to show the state of things that the Mets are in right now, and what a different world it is with an owner that actually knows what they're doing from a money standpoint.
Yeah, I had a feeling this was going to happen when the moment he became owner of the team, the moment the season started. I had a feeling this was going to happen, and it worked out well. Even with reduced capacity, he made a profit. I remember that reduced capacity. That was some wild thing. Like, it didn't make sense them using fake crowd noise when there was fans in the stands. Even it was only 1,000. They still felt they needed to use that fake crowd noise. That felt weird being in a stadium, and you could hear the fake crowd noise being piped through the speakers.
I know that was ridiculous. That was it. But the thing that sucked too about it is that it's not even something we can blame the Mets for, because that was a mandate for Major League Baseball. I don't know why, but that's typical Major League Baseball. Rob Manfred being out of touch, not knowing that people can see through pretty easily your fake crowd noise, especially when there's like 500 people in the stands. But
Yeah.
all right, we've spent a good amount of time on that. I know me and you especially, we could sit there and talk baseball for hours. So, but unfortunately, we're gonna have to keep this into a decent little time frame here, as we'll turn the page right now, quickly to a little football. And before we get on our Jets and our Giants, I'd really like to get your opinion. What do you think about the news yesterday with that trade coming down, of the Seattle Seahawks sending Russell Wilson to the Denver Broncos for a litany of picks, couple of first round picks, couple of second round picks, and a defensive lineman, a couple of pieces that they got back aside from the picks and everything the Seahawks got back. So it's a big blockbuster trade. Really changes the scape of not only the NFC but now the AFC West. The AFC West is completely loaded with quarterbacks. You got Mahomes, Herbert, now Wilson, and even Derek Carr's a very good quarterback in that division. So really, really good quarterbacks. Really changes the scope out there in the West. And what do you think about that, Dan? It's a pretty fun
Well,
trade there.
I got some friends in Seattle that are a little bit sad about it, but at the same time, I got a friend of mine who's a Broncos fan, Matt Iceman. He's probably really excited about this, and
That's
I'm sure Matt is going to have high expectations. The first game of the regular season, he'll be grabbing his Stella, excited about that.
yeah, you're right. Matty Iceman is a big Broncos fan. That's a good point. And what's it called? And he's definitely got a good chance to see his team in the playoffs now. Russell Wilson is one of the best quarterbacks in football. Obviously, he's been to 2 Super Bowls. He's won one. This is a guy who now, too, something a lot of people don't realize is that Russell Wilson is second only to Peyton Manning for throwing touchdown passes in his first 10 years in the league. So
Yeah,
Russell
yeah.
Russell Wilson, hell of a quarterback.
I never said this, but I unexpectedly got to be at Super Bowl 48 unexpectedly because a friend of my mother's, I don't know how she had these tickets, but she just called me like early in the morning, said, "You want these tickets?" So I went, and I didn't know anyone. It was too late for me to talk to anyone out of state who may have been a fan of one of the two teams in the Super Bowl. So I just took my sister, and it was a lot warmer than I expected that day in the Meadowlands.
Yeah, they got real lucky with that day. I remember it was kind of crappy the couple of days leading up to that. But yeah, they definitely lucked out with the weather. Unfortunately, it wasn't a great game, as Seattle kind of smacked Peyton Manning and the Broncos. But the Broncos would come back a couple of years later and get their ring. But yeah,
Yep,
now
yep. And
Denver bringing in. Oh,
I have
continue.
probably what I consider the second biggest football game I attended. You know what the biggest game I attended ever was?
What was that?
Super Bowl 46, Indianapolis
Really,
Giants.
40. That was Giants Patriots, the second one, right?
Yeah, yeah. You may have seen me tweet a picture of the ticket from the game.
Really? Wow. And I never knew you were at that game.
Yeah, yeah. I was. Yeah, I was. A neighbor invited me. A neighbor, a friend of mine, and his father lived by me. Decided to
Now,
invite me. They what happened was he's watching the NFC Championship game with me, and he tells me like right after the game they reserved the package to go to the game, and they're bringing me with Indianapolis. And I
wow.
came back time to be at the course after the game. We arrived the day before the parade. I just had to have my mother get the Daily News because I knew they would sell out by the time I got back to Queens. But pulled off getting the Daily News. I was able to buy the hat and the shirt at the stadium. They were selling the merch right there as soon as they wanted. I was able to buy it in the stadium.
Wow, man, that's awesome. As a Jets fan, I can't even like wrap my head around that you were in the stadium for your team winning the Super Bowl. That doesn't even compute to me. But that is really awesome. And wasn't that the same Super Bowl that Eastside Dave was at? And there was the infamous picture of him sleeping, sitting up.
Yep, there was. I saw that. I think I saw that picture when I think the next day as I'm like I'm just scrolling through my phone the day as I'm waiting for the flight back. And by the way, on the way to the Super Bowl, guess what I cranked up to 11 as the plane was taxiing down the runway. Eastside Dave's.
I'm gonna guess that it was the Eastside Dave "Fuck Tom Brady" song.
Yep, I think I remember there was a couple of people on the plane dancing.
Now the best thing ever too is recently in the Eastside Dave show before its unfortunate ending at Compound Media, Dave had as I'm sure you know, actually I don't remember if you were in the audience that day. You very well might have been, when he had
Lawrence, I was there.
Lawrence Tynes kicking in your
I
face.
I was there when it happened. I thought that was so neat to get to actually speak to a guy that was a part of so many great memories. Like I still remember sitting next to we didn't have Mr. Maloonigan yet, but we had Rosie Shea back then. During the 2007 the NFC Championship came, my mom and my sister were, I don't know, they were hanging out with a friend of my mother's, so I was just pretty much by myself that night watching the game at home, and Rosie's just sitting on the couch. I just remember just high fiving, picking up Rosie celebrating like crazy. I think I may have the dog. I gave her a kiss on the forehead because it was one of the only living person there in the room with me watching the game, and my grandmother was wondering if I was okay. Was hearing the noise from her room because she was in town at the time, and I had to tell her, no, 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 nothing bad happened. We're going to the Super Bowl. We're going to the Super Bowl. I remember saying to my grandmother, don't hurt a roller
Oh,
coaster of emotions. Two missed field goals, two missed attempts at getting the game-winning field goal before you finally got it the third time. So she heard like a lot of noise from me that night.
oh man, I remember that was a bitterly cold game in Green Bay. Just a really, really terrific job by the Giants. Because man, I'm telling you right now, I did not think they were going to win that game, and just what a run they had. And like I said, as a Jets fan, I can't even wrap my head around that shit. But the thought of winning a Super Bowl is so far removed from my brain right now.
Yep,
Um,
I was at two parades. Actually, the one when they won Super Bowl 42, I was actually in I was sitting in front of this front steps of City Hall because we at the time my mother knew someone who worked at City Hall. So we're sitting right in front of the steps of City Hall in that audience during a City Hall ceremony.
Very cool, man. Very cool. But now let's get to the current things of our two teams. So of the top 10 picks in the NFL draft this year, the Jets are picking fourth and 10th. And I believe what the Giants are picking 5 and 7th. I know
Yep,
you
that's
guys,
I
yeah,
believe
five
that's
and because I know um the Seahawks also just traded into the number 9 spot with that Russell Wilson deal from Denver. So the I know the Giants are either 7 or 8, but I'm pretty sure it's 7. I think they're picking fifth and seventh. So the Giants have two very high value picks right now. There's a lot of speculation on what they're going to be doing with that. If you were calling the shots, what position do you think the Giants really need to attack from, even if it's, whether it's the draft or free agency? What are you focusing on most this offseason right now?
I would think they need to draft some offensive linemen.
Mm-hmm.
I I think this season they weren't able to give they weren't giving the quarterback enough time to throw, and that's what they need to do during this draft.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And there's obviously we got free agency coming up in about a week too, which is going to be pretty interesting to see what our two teams do. The Giants are not in as great cap position as the Jets are, but the Giants can still afford to make some moves. As for the Jets with me, we got the 4 and the 10 pick. Like I said, I really want to see the Jets address an edge rusher. I want to see them pick up, um, any of the top edge rushers out there. I know the main guy that everybody wants is probably not going to be there at number 4, but I I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. Hope he falls. If not, just take the best player available. And look, I'm a Notre Dame fan for college football. I'm a big fan of Kyle Hamilton. I do not want the Jets to spend a top 10 pick on a safety. Don't do that. They don't need to do that. Uh, Kyle Hamilton is a great player, and he's going to be a great player somewhere. But that's too high value of a pick on a safety, in my opinion. It's like spending a pick on a running back that high, where you know their shelf life, it's not necessarily worth the value of that high pick. So I'm probably I would rather the Jets stuck. If you're gonna go secondary, get me a corner. If you're gonna go receiver, I can deal with that too. I hear a lot of people talking about DJ Metcalf being available now that the Seahawks have moved on from Russell Wilson. What do you think about that, Dan? If an opportunity came up to trade for DK Metcalf, would you be interested in the Giants trying to fit him in?
Yeah, I definitely would be. I think that would only improve our team.
Well, now let me ask you this, because I heard a lot of people talking today. Actually, as a matter of fact, I heard it on Carton and Roberts this afternoon on WFAN, where Evan Roberts is he's a very good Jet fan, very knowledgeable Jet fan, and I really respect his opinion on a lot of different issues regarding the Jets and the Mets and all things sports. Really, he's a pretty smart guy, but I was very surprised to hear him say that he'd be willing to give up one of the top 10 picks for DK Metcalf. And I'm not taking anything away from DK Metcalf. He is a hell of a player. Um, he is a top receiver. But if I don't want to give up one of my top 10 picks for him, because if I'm going to do that, I'd rather just draft a guy who I'm going to have for 4 or 5 years. Metcalf, if you don't sign him to an extension, he's a free agent after this year. So there's a possibility you're giving up a first round pick to lose this guy to free agency. So from your Giants perspective, if I came to you and I'm the Seattle GM and you're the Giants GM, and I say, I'm willing to do a deal for you for Metcalf, but it's going to require your number 7 overall pick. would you be willing to give that up?
Hmm. I wouldn't be willing to give up the seventh overall pick. That could be a very key pick in the long run, getting us closer to where we want to be.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, especially with all the holes that because look, the Jets are the same way, which is why a big reason why I don't want to trade one of those top 10 picks, because you have a chance if you do everything right. With like I said, the Jets and the Giants combined, we have four of the top 10 picks. That means the Jets can fill two holes with starters, and the Giants can fill two holes with potential starters from this draft, which is what you should get out of the top 10. If you're picking a guy in the top 10, he should be an immediate starter for you. So the Jets and the Giants have a chance to fill two holes, and we both have a lot of holes to fill on our team. So it doesn't make much sense to me to part with that for a wide receiver. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. This draft is going to be very crucial for not just this year, but maybe the next 2 years down the line.
No doubt about it. And actually, you hit on something else there real quick, is that this draft is supposedly a very deep wide receiver draft. So, I don't really see the value in giving up a top 10 pick for a very good wide receiver who's also on the walk year of his contract. So you might just be giving up a first round pick for 1 year, so which doesn't seem worth it for me.
Yeah, exactly. Not, I don't think it's worth it for just a 1 year receiver. There could be plenty of good ones in the draft this year.
Yeah, and especially if one of our team goes out there and has a crappy year this year. So you're telling me that the Jets gave up a first round pick to have DK Metcalf for one season where they went 5-12, or the Giants, the same thing. They had one season of DK Metcalf where you guys go 7-10 or 6-11. It's like it just does not seem worth it. And it's not worth that value.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. This is a very crucial draft, and this is going to be one of those drafts that I'll be watching, especially a bit more closely than others. Very, very similar to when I remember I think it was 2004. I was watching that draft very closely. So this is going to be on that level of a must view.
You're right about
And
that. 2004, very, very awesome draft where Eli Manning was selected first overall by the San Diego Chargers.
Diego Chargers, and Eli Manning knew that it wasn't a good idea. He did not want to suffer the same fate that his father, Cooper Manning, suffered. He was a good quarterback on a bad team, and he knew his chances would be better if he went to the Giants. And it was pretty clear that he was gonna go to the Giants. That San Diego and the Giants were gonna trade a draft picks for the Giants to get Eli Manning. It was clear, and the draft day was pretty much a formality that year.
That's true. And hey, the guy that you guys drafted in Philip Rivers, he didn't turn out too bad either. Although he didn't have two rings.
Yeah, but fortunately didn't go to. Fortunately, it didn't lead to any celebrations for Gino.
Very true. Very true. All right, now before we move on from football, I do want to get your opinion real quick on just in the last month or two, the Giants have gone out and they've hired a new head coach and a new general manager. What are your feelings about these guys? Because to be honest, I really haven't familiarized myself with them that much. I figured I would do it closer to us getting to the draft and everything like that. But just on this debut episode of the Best Seat in the House podcast, don't forget that name, ladies and gentlemen. Um, what are your thoughts on your two new head honchos over there?
Uh, the GM, it's still like a roughly unknown, but the assistant coach, I have a feeling he was part of that coaching staff that built up Buffalo into a contender. So he might have some little experience there. Maybe what they worked into building up Buffalo could eventually lead to a resurgence in the Meadowlands.
Very true. Very true. How do you feel about Joe Judge? Do you think that the Giants did him wrong, or were you ready to move on?
I think I think at that time I was we were just ready to move on. It just didn't turn out well. He was making bad calls during the last couple of games of the season. It was just time to move on.
Yeah, yeah, I don't disagree with you there either. And real quick, what about Gettleman? Were you happy to see him go?
Oh, I was happy to see this guy go.
Yeah, a lot of Giant fans. I don't blame you either because he probably was there at least a year, probably two more than he should have been. Um, but the Giants took a chance and they had faith in Gettleman. It just didn't work out. And they got two new good guys in there right now, and let's give them a shot and see what they got. Um, and see if they can turn this giant mess around where they haven't had a winning season since 2016. And on the other side of town, my New York Jets haven't had a winning season since 2015. So a lot of crappy football going on in the metro area over the last 5 to 6 years. So let's keep our fingers crossed that with these four top 10 picks this year between our two teams, that we're going to see some good football on the horizon. And who knows, maybe in a couple of years, we'll be getting a Jets Giants Super Bowl. What do you think about that?
I Since this has never quite happened before, they're gonna. I know, like how in baseball they had the term Subway Series. I'm gonna go with the term Big Apple Bowl.
I like it. I like it. I was going to say Subway Super Bowl, but I think the Big Apple Bowl, you hit the nail on the head, bro. I think that's a good idea.
Yep, exactly. At first, I could have thought of Subway, but then the whole reason why Subway Series was called Subway Series because during the time they had three baseball teams, the
Mm-hmm.
D stopped at all three stadiums. If
Mm-hmm.
you look at the three of old New York Transit maps, the D
Mm-hmm.
train stadium, so that name made sense. So I feel I had to think of something that would make sense for this one. So we're going to call it the Big Apple Bowl if it
The,
happens.
the Big Apple Bowl. I like it. We should copyright it. All right, but now let's move on to we'll start to wrap this up a little bit as our debut episode here. I do want to cover one last topic. We'll be talking a little hockey right now. Um, our New York Rangers had a really tough game last night in Minnesota. They ended up dropping the game 5-2. They really had just started to right the ship again as they had a really fun, convincing win, a 4-1 win against the Jets. In the game before that, they beat the Devils 3-1. Before that, so they had really been playing a good defensive style of hockey, and unfortunately, everything just ended up falling apart. Uh, in no small part, unfortunately, to the backup goalie Georgiev. I think he played a really bad game. It's not all on him because the Rangers did not play a great game in front of him either. But I'm really losing faith quickly in Georgiev. And what are your thoughts on the how this Ranger team is doing and the future of Georgiev with this team?
I have a feeling. I have a feeling we're probably gonna be riding the ship after last night's game. I also have a feeling Georgiev's not going to be back next year, one way or another. Either he somehow, either he somehow comes into a position that he becomes a good trade bait, or he's just we don't we he's released or however it happens. He's not going to
Mm-hmm.
be back.
I agree, and be honest, I would hope they move on from him by the trade deadline, which I know it's going to be tough, especially with teams trying to work their salary caps and everything like that. But for the rest of this season, I would feel much more confident uh, going with a backup goalie if you know if it was not Georgiev in there, and if they brought Keith Kincaid up from the AHL Hartford Wolfpack, who he stepped in earlier this year. I forget who he played against. I want to say it was Boston, but I don't specifically remember. But I remember Kincaid came up in a spot start, played a great game. The Rangers won that game. If you remember last year, Keith Kincaid came up at the end of the year, played a real nice stretch of games for them when they were forced to use him when Igor was hurt. And to be honest, I would much rather see Keith Kincaid, who's been having a great year down in the AHL this year. It looks like, he's going to help lead the Wolfpack back into the playoffs, the AHL Calder Cup playoffs. And I would just feel much more comfortable with him as the backup for these last 20 plus games, and also, not to mention, going into the playoffs. I would feel much more comfortable with Kincaid. What do you think about that?
I think the same thing. I think he's a very admirable backup, and if we could somehow, if Georgiev could get us something great in return, the Rangers need to pull the trigger on that move, and we might be able to get something good that could help us down this stretch run. That's hopefully going to lead to me having a very thick playoff beard, like a very, very deep into the playoffs kind of beard on my face, because I don't shave during the playoffs.
Oh, I'm with you, man. I don't shave right now. I'll really take it to the next level in the playoffs, and I'm with you. I would like to get Georgiev off the team, but I'm telling you this right now. I don't even want anything good. I mean, I'll take, like, if you're gonna say I'll give you a 5th round pick for Georgiev, I'll take that right now. Get him off the team, get his salary off the team, so it's at least they'll have a couple million to play with extra next year, because God knows the Rangers are going to need every penny that they have next season with all this cap crunch that's going to be coming up. And you know what it really comes down to too is, Georgiev has always kind of seemed like an outlier on this team, where if you remember, even last year, Tony DeAngelo got into it with him, ended up getting into a fight. He got cut. He ended up getting thrown off the team. To be honest, I think the Rangers, no matter what you want to say about Tony DeAngelo, you might not like Tony DeAngelo's political leanings. You might not like his Twitter account. You might not like the fact that he has what some people would call a big mouth. But I think the Rangers made the wrong choice on siding with Georgiev over Tony DeAngelo, because look at what Tony DeAngelo's gone and done in Carolina. The Rangers just cut him and just let him go to Carolina, and he's been a thorn in the side every time the Rangers have played Carolina since then. I think it was just one time, but still, seeing that does not, inspire a lot of confidence. And then seeing the way Georgiev has played, Georgiev, and I totally get you that you can't blame him totally, because he did go a month between starts, which was partially because they had the 2-week break for the Olympics and everything. But facts are facts. Over Georgiev's last 5 starts, he's 0-5 with goals against, right? It's a shade under 5. So look, I never had a big problem with Georgiev until he started playing bad. And the guy's 0-5. And I will say this to defend Georgiev a little bit, because earlier in the year, at the end of November and the beginning of December, when Igor Shesterkin got hurt for that brief period of time where he had that hamstring injury again, Alexander Georgiev righted the ship. He was playing every day for a good 2-week period and was great. He played great. I was very happy with him. Had no complaints. But the fact of the matter is, now we all know that the future of this team is Shesterkin, right?
Yep.
I mean,
exactly.
That's obvious.
I feel like the Rangers have done a great job with 3 generations in a row of goaltenders. We had Richter, and we went a little bit into Lundqvist, and now we're going into the Shesterkin era. The bar is gonna be raised very high for the next generation of goaltenders when they see the last 3 starting goalies we've had have probably potentially have their numbers in the rafters.
That's very true, especially with the way that he's. I mean, Georgiev's season this year is just phenomenal. I mean, look, we marveled at. I mean, and just like you said, Richter, world class. He won a world championship as a goalie. He won a Stanley Cup championship as a goalie. Um, he 300 wins, number retired at the guard, just like you said, as good as it gets. Lundqvist won the Vezina in 2012, took the Rangers to a Stanley Cup champion to a Stanley Cup final. Unfortunately, not to a championship. Led the Rangers to the playoffs all those years where he was like the only player on the team. And the crazy thing is that what Shesterkin is doing this year is blowing what either one of those guys ever did in the regular season out of the water. As crazy as it is, and I mean, I know Lundqvist in his Vezina season had the 197 goals against. He won 39 games. He was amazing, no doubt about it. You can't take anything away from what Lundqvist did that season. But it's unbelievable because Shesterkin looks like he's beating that season, right? I mean, he's leading in goals against. He's got a 193. His save percentage leads the league 942, 28 and 6 and 3. I mean, does it get better than that?
Oh, it doesn't get better than that. It looks like we have a goalie that could carry this team. It's gonna be a very fun playoffs, and I can't wait to see how it turns out and to finally get to see playoff hockey back at the Garden again.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I'm getting pumped up just thinking about seeing the Garden packed again for some playoff hockey. Um, and speaking of playoff hockey, let's round it down a little bit right now as we're starting to wind down our last little topic here right now. Let's talk about a team that probably isn't going to have any playoff hockey this year, and that's the New York Islanders. They had great runs the last 2 years. They won they got all the way to Game 6 2 years ago in the Eastern Conference Finals. They got to the Eastern Finals again, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't really the Eastern Finals, but it's pretty much what it amounted to. To Game 7 last year. So 2 really fun, great runs that ultimately scared the shit out of guys like me and you, because they were that close, bro. They were that close.
Yeah,
but
I remember seeing my uncle all over Twitter. I have an uncle in Long Island. He's an Isles fan. He's always all over Facebook during that whole time. So
yeah, it's true. And they had a really good run those last 2 years. It just does, they really got screwed at the beginning of the year with COVID and a whole bunch of different things that just really didn't break their way. But they're probably going to be moving on. What do you think is the future of the Islanders? Do you think that
there's going to be a 2-year rebuild?
You think 2 years, really?
Yeah, that might start somewhere around the trading deadline, and it's probably going to take a good 2 years.
To be honest, like I know what you're saying. I don't think that it's going to be that long because Lou Lamoriello, he's a hell of a GM. He's a really, really good GM. And I really think that Lou is going to, I think he's going to trade their free agents. Like I think Semyon Varlamov is going to get traded. I think Kyle Clutterbuck is going to get traded. I think Andy Green is probably going to get traded. But when you look at that young core that the Islanders have in Sorokin, the goalie, they have Barzal, who's is a hell of a talent. Noah Dobson, Wallstrom. They have a lot of guys there. I think they screwed themselves over when they signed guys like Palmieri and Zach Parise this offseason. I think they're also kind of, for lack of a better term, up Shit's Creek because they really were up against it with the cap and everything. They really didn't have much cap wiggle room or anything. So I think that he made a couple of moves that he was just keeping his fingers crossed, hoping that it worked out. Unfortunately, it didn't. Unfortunately for the Islanders. But I could really see if they make a few smart trades, which Lou Lamoriello is all about, and they get rid of those guys that I just said and clear some cap space, another guy who they could get rid of is Josh Bailey, who really, I never even knew this. Islander fans apparently hate Josh Bailey. Did you ever know this?
I didn't know this because I'm always seeing these tweets. I didn't see. I know that my cousin and her boyfriend are always. I see them all the time talking about the Islanders on their Facebook. I didn't see this one at all on their Facebook.
Yeah, I don't know. Islander fans just really don't like Josh Bailey. And, I got nothing against the guy. I mean, obviously, he doesn't play for my team, but I know he had a really good playoff run for them 2 years ago. But now when you look at Bailey, who I always thought was a decent little, role player for them, his salary is over 5 million. He's still got a couple of years left on that deal. So I think another guy too to look for that Lou might want to trade is Josh Bailey. Now, one of the names that I've mentioned, now obviously the Rangers probably don't have the cap room for a guy like Bailey anyway, but there've been a lot of talk about rebuilding that third line for the Rangers. How do you think a guy like Cal Clutterbuck would fit into that?
I think he would probably fit in very well, bringing a nice veteran presence, has playoff experience. I think it could only go from up from here.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I would love to see Cal Clutterbuck come in. He doesn't necessarily have the scoring touch that the Rangers need right now, because obviously, as you know, we definitely need a scoring right winger. I would love to see a guy like Rickle or somebody come in from Anaheim, or anything like that. You need a guy that can score on the wing for this team right now. And uh, but Clutterbuck, I do agree with you 100% that if you got a guy like Cal Clutterbuck, a hardworking guy that wins the battles in the corners for you, that even if he's not putting it in the back of the net, he'd help your team out a lot.
And I have a feeling it would make a huge impact.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. So a lot of things going on. A lot of a lot of fires on the griddle right now for us. A lot of things to sink our teeth into as sports fans. As me and you just did a lap around the sports world. We're coming up to the end here. Dan, I had a blast on our first show. What do you think? We got one show in the books now. How do you feel, buddy?
Yep, and in the words of Howie Rose, we put this one in the books, and I feel like we did a great show. I can't wait to see where this thing goes. I have a feeling it's gonna go really well, and hopefully this is the beginning of something that's gonna be huge.
I agree, man. Just like Trump and Mike Francesa before him once said, this is going to be huge. So, buddy, really great first show. Had a blast talking with you here. Is there anything you'd like to say before we call it a day?
Well, I'd love to plug, of course, my YouTube Daniel Kurlan, one word on YouTube. There's some content. There's going to be some videos coming up soon. There's even going to be. I'm actually typing up some sketch ideas that I invited you to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a little sketch involving March 31st, potentially being filmed by the stadium. I gotta check out to see if the space is going to be open up that I could film the space, but it's going to be some content during that'll hopefully get through the lockout, and there'll be plenty of stuff once the season starts, of course.
Exactly, man. So,
And
that's right.
there's
Ladies, what's that,
I
buddy?
got because right now, of course, Eastside Dave and Roy are taking a little break, but I do encourage people to go on the Compound Media archives and watch. If you haven't watched it before, do watch all the classic episodes of the Eastside Dave show. And of course, if you've seen it before, of course, it's always worth a rewatch. But definitely watch it because I'm sure, because I have a feeling eventually I'm not I can't speak for someone else, but it there is they could eventually return in some form or another. So why not get acclimated for what you might see be return?
No doubt about it, man. And what Dan said is 100% right. If you have not subscribed to Compound Media yet, go check it out. Uh, you tons of bang for your buck on that one. It's $8.99 a month, and you get so much, value for that. You get all the archives, like Dan said. You can check out every episode of the East Side Dave Show on there, even the old Gavin McGinnis shows, which, those were always hilarious. The Anthony Cumia show, it's the main show for the network. Anthony, he's a great guy, with the hilarious show as always. And not to mention another great show like In Hot Water, with Gino Bisconti and Aaron Berg. That Jameson show with Don Jameson. So there's ton, and obviously the Wet Spot with Chrissy Mayer. A lot of fun stuff on Compound Media. Go check it out. And yeah, just like Dan said, keep your ears and eyes open for all of our content. We're going to be having a lot of fun things come out. We're going to we're just gonna be putting out a lot of stuff. We're gonna have fun with this. We're not gonna put too much pressure on ourselves. We're just gonna be ourselves and bullshit about sports. So if you like what you heard today, come back and join us next week. I'm sure we're gonna have another banger of a show. I highly doubt Major League Baseball will have a deal done by then, so we'll probably still be bitching about baseball not being back yet. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Rob Cramer. You can check me out on Twitter at Cramer New York. He's Daniel Bobo Kurlan. You can check him out on Twitter at Bobo 103 NYC.
Yeah, Bobo 103 NYC on Twitter, and it's a Bobo 718 DK on Instagram.
On Instagram. Okay, perfect. And for the show, don't forget, check us out at BSith_podcast. That's best seat in the house, shortened _podcast on Twitter. And check us out at Best Seat in the House podcast on Instagram. We'll be having a lot of fun stuff going up there, and all the updates for the next time our show's coming out, and when this show you're listening to right now is out. So you'll be hearing that first. So once again, thanks for tuning in. Dan, great show as always, and we'll catch you next time.